Hello guys, welcome back to John's Workshop, and in this episode the excitement is finally over. So the Marc engine, the flame licker engine, flame eater engine, vacuum engine or any other name these things have got is finally complete, and so we're going to go and take a look at that and give it a bit of a test run and see whether it works or not, which is massively exciting. So the suspense is over. So just before we go and have a stare at it, just a couple of points I just want to run through that are up on the board just as a bit of a recap on here. So this is my first ever engine build from prints. So as I said at the start of this, you know, I did an engine build, a copy of a glow engine, aircraft model engine many years ago. I was probably 19 or something like that when I did that. So yeah, apart from that, no engine building other than big huge gas turbine stuff obviously through work, but no miniature or model engine experience. So so yeah, lots of learning along the way, so lots of new things, new skills, things I've never done before, or certainly things that I've probably done many years ago and forgotten about. So yeah, lots of learning, and again in the final assembly and sort of putting things together, again lots of learning points, and we'll touch on those hopefully to be helpful to anybody else who wants to have a go at this as we get into the view of the engine. Lots of firsts, and I think I've mentioned this before, so I think first time I've ever been drilling 1mm diameter holes, first time I've ever been making tiny parts that I can hardly pick up in my fingers. So yeah, lots of new things all the way through this, and it's been a great experience, the whole thing. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, right, you know, from start to finish. It's something different, and you know, having, as I said in my previous video, full-time work, quite a stressful job, and when I get sort of out of work in the evenings, you know, I get stuck into this, and it's a proper tonic and proper therapy, because the whole day's events at that point just melt away and I'm totally focused in on this. So yeah, it's been a fantastic project, and it's really pushed me on to keep going and keep trying, and yeah, so there's been some really good times making this, and I've really enjoyed it, thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, so what do we say? Does it actually work? So we're about to find out. So I'm going to bring you in just shortly. We're going to have a nice close look at this from a few different angles, bit of discussion around it, and then we will stick some juice in it and press go and see what happens. So while I've got my fancy tent with my fancy lighting set up, we might as well keep this in here because it's got some good light on it. So just a quick run through. Dead tree base, and I struggled with that but what I've done with that is tried to do something different. I'm not keen on the mahogany look, so I went for a very light grey washed pine. Still not sure whether I like that or not, but it's good for now. I think it offsets the rest of the engine quite nicely. Aluminium base, aluminium frame, brass fuel tank, steel flywheel, steel cam, brass spacers on the crank camshaft. We've got bearings in ball race bearings in two of these uprights supporting the crank camshaft. We've got some valve lever arms, cam follower, some springs, a valve and a valve plate, and then stainless steel cylinder, cast iron piston in the middle, and stainless steel cylinder head. So that's largely what you can see from this view. We'll just spin that round and take a look from a different angle. So you can see here the wick poking out the fuel tank. This runs on methylated spirits or alcohol, denatured alcohol, that kind of thing. You can see the brass valve lever arms attached to the shaft at the back that runs off the cam follower, and inside here we can see the crank web and the conrod. If I turn the engine over slightly, you can see the conrod there attached to the crank web, and that all rotates round quite nicely inside there, moving the piston up and down inside the cylinder. We've got a badge plate at the front that was made for me by a friend in the absence of my engraving machine. We'll just see if we can get a close-up of that. So there's the badge plate. So you can see there, this engine is called Marc, M-A-R-C, and this was designed by Jan Ridders, quite popular amongst engine builders, and he makes his plans freely available on his website for this engine. I will put a link to that in the description, and you can see there that the Marc engine is named after Jan's eldest son, and he designed and built this for his son, I think as a gift, as a birthday gift, many years ago. And I think the engine's been through a couple of design iterations through the years, so that's how the engine gets its name. So we'll just spin round and take a look from the other side. So this is a view from the back side, and you can see here the shaft that supports the valve lever arms when they move from the motion of the cam through the cam follower. That lifts the valve arms up and down, which through the springs transfers that motion to the valve plate at the front of the engine. And we'll just take a final look on the other end of the engine. So you can see it from this end, you get a good view of the flywheel, steel flywheel, and also a good view of the ball race bearing in this end support piece holding this end of the crank / camshaft. So yeah, all very interesting, very nice build. You can probably see I've put a lot of time and effort into the appearance on this as well at the final build stages, and I'm really pleased with how it looks and how it's finished off. So we'll spin it back round to the front. We'll probably take it out of the photography tent and stick it on the bench, and yeah, we'll see what happens. So I just thought we'd explain the principle of this, how it works. So as this valve plate here moves up and down, if I move it down, you'll see the port in the cylinder opens up, and you can just see hopefully the piston coming to top dead center. And what happens then is, as the piston moves down the cylinder, it sucks in flame into the cylinder. The valve then closes because of the cooling fins. The gases inside then cool, causing a vacuum because the cylinder is sealed at this point, and that is your power stroke. That vacuum then pulls the piston back up the cylinder, and then causing the valve to open again, and the whole process to move, go through its cycle. So these things are incredibly inefficient as an engine, less than 5% efficient, flame lickers normally, and the key to getting one of these to work is having as little friction as possible in the entire system. And so it's quite hard to show that with the valve, because obviously we've got compression in the cylinder at this point. But if I lift the valve up to a point where it's now not closing the cylinder and just turn the engine over, there's very little friction in there at all in the whole system, so that runs nice and freely. So that's the basic operation. We will put some juice in and see what happens. How exciting. Right then guys, we've got some fuel in the tank. We'll apply a little bit of fire and we'll see what happens. almost. I think the cylinder probably needs some lubrication, so I'm just going to do that off camera. We're going to just scrape a little bit of graphite into the cylinder and I'll bring you back. Well, there we go guys, that gets us to the end of my very first engine build. So I've shown you it running in various different situations and I just want to clear a few things up. So has the rookie engine builder come in and scored a perfect 10? Absolutely not. So let's just go through a few of the things that I've been through on this engine, and I've not filmed most of them because some of the bits that I struggled with, the camera just wasn't on at the time, so apologies for that, and largely the videos would have been hours and hours long and you'd have all fallen long asleep. So what are the things that I've had to do? So first question, have I had to remake more than one of anything on this engine? Yes, I have, and it was one of these little brass pieces that's at the top of the valve spring, and I was having quite some difficulty soldering the spring wire into the hole, and that's largely because the spring wire is 0.8 of a mil. The holes I could only drill 1 mil because that's all I had, and I thought that would be okay. 1/8 thou clearance, 0.2 of a mil clearance, but it appears that that was more challenging than it really should have been. And what happened was the solder wasn't taking on one of them, and it's so small it got hot, far too hot, very quickly, and it just melted. So I just lost the brass bit, and I thought I'd still got it to show, but it's just so small it's got lost. So yeah, had to remake one of the brass bushes on the valve. That's one thing. Did I balls anything up? Yes, I did. The holes for the valve support arms at the back, for whatever reason, and I don't know how, when I came to assemble the engine, the top holes were in the right place, the bottom holes were in the wrong place. So I had to, fortunately it was the right way, so the wrong holes are hidden by the bracket, but I've had to re-drill another set of holes slightly lower down for these to fit. So yeah, we made a cock up with that. Next question is, once I'd got it all built and assembled, did it run first time? No. Did it run second time? No. or the third, or the fourth, or the fifth. I think you get the picture. So quite some faffing around trying to get this going and scratching of heads. As I said, it's the first one of these I've ever even seen or touched, let alone built. And it appears I made far too good a job of the fit between the piston and the bore, and I've been on a really steep learning curve with this. And this engine's worst enemy is condensation, and what happens is when you first run this thing up or try and run it, because the engine's cold and the hot gases that go in the cylinder are hot, it just condensates instantly. That gets itself down the side of the piston, which flashes over with rust almost instantly, and that must happen in all of these things. And if you've got a really tight fit, as I've got, well, not tight fit, but a very, very close running fit with hardly zero clearance between piston and cylinder, you can imagine what happens at that point. It all locks up. And I was scratching my head, playing around with the valve timing, trying to figure out what on earth was going on, bending springs, trying to change the spring tension on the front. So I've been on a proper learning curve with this, and all that time, nothing to do with valve timing, nothing to do with spring tension, everything to do with the clearance between piston and cylinder. So I eventually worked that one out, and so we took some more material off the piston. I can't tell you how much because I didn't measure it. So this was an iterative process, take a bit more off, bit of polishing, put it back in, retry it, it would lock up again. I blued it, put it in, seeing where it was locking up, rubbed down the high spots, and we kept going like that probably a dozen times or more until we got it to the point where that initial condensation burst was, the engine could cope with that, and it could cope with the instant flashover of rust that you get. I tried to control the flashover of rust by having some form of lubrication in the cylinder, and I've tried really thin, so you know, WD-40 thin oil. I've tried very thin, very lightweight sewing machine oil, just a very thin smear on the piston to try and stop that instant flashover of rust. Doesn't seem to make any difference. The thickness of the oil then becomes the problem, not the thickness of the rust, so you kind of scup it any way round. So anyway, all of that aside, that was all good learning, and I just want to, you know, make it quite clear that I'm not an expert engine builder, far from it. This has struggled its way into motion, believe me. And the next thing I would say is, if we take 5% efficiency as a figure, which is what I've read about these engines, I think this engine is taking 4.99999% to overcome the frictions and the various running stresses that are built within it, and I've got that 0.0001% of additional power that actually keeps the thing and keeps the momentum going and keeps it running. It appears to be incredibly temperamental, so I've had this running 5 or 6 times. The first time I got it running, it ran and ran and ran for till the fuel tank had run out. I probably got 7 minutes of constant running, very stable, no problem at all. I came out to run it the next day, changed absolutely nothing, and I just couldn't get it to maintain a firing, couldn't get it to maintain motion and keep going. Stripped it down again, cleaned it, put it back together, rebuilt it, tried again, slightly better, but then deteriorated. So yeah, this thing's right on the edge of constant running. I'm going to keep playing around with it as a learning curve and see if I can chase that extra 0.00 few percent out of it to keep it so that it will start and maintain every time I run it. So I'm going to do a bit more playing with it, because I would like it to be in a position where when I want to run it, I can just fill it with fuel and I know what to do to get it running. So yeah, it is literally right on the edge of going, not going. But all of that being said, and just reflecting back on the whole process, it's been a fantastic project. I've really enjoyed it. It looks absolutely great, and it's definitely going to be going somewhere, not decided where yet, but on display for me to look at, and every now and again we'll dust it off, stick a bit of juice in it and see if we can get the thing running. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Am I going to build another flame liquor engine? Probably not, certainly not in the very near future. Am I going to build any more engines? Yes, I've really enjoyed the modelling side so much, but I quite fancy either a Stirling engine for something a bit different and a bit more learning, something different again, or even going IC, don't know yet. There's a couple of options there, so I'm not going to rush into anything. Going to take a bit of time now we've done that, move back into the general workshop stuff. I've got a lot to do with my shaper and my engraving machine and some other projects, and as I've just said in a recent video, I've got lots of updates planned for the shop, so I want to throw myself back into a bit of that kind of thing, and then over the course of time I'll then decide where we go next with engine building. And if I do play with this a bit more and get this to a point where it will run, you know, repeatedly and every time, I will come back and tell you what I did to get there, because somebody else might be building this very same engine and might have the same kind of difficulties that I've had, so it'll be hopefully helpful for other people. So with all of that being said, and I hope I've done justice to myself as the rookie there, by confessing to the challenges that I've enjoyed over the last couple of weeks. I hope you've all enjoyed that. I hope you've all enjoyed seeing it run, because I certainly did. Excitement was uncontainable the first time it took off, so yeah, fantastic experience. Hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you to the subscribers and new subscribers that have come along, and we will catch you all very soon on another video when we'll be making something else.